Hello, everyone. This is Adrian Sinclair with Apodcast.com, and today my guest is Karen Hyatt. And today we're going to be talking about food taxation in Utah. Roll the intro. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you.
How are you?
Good. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate that. You did this on the spur of the moment, and that was awesome.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
I'm getting really, it's like a habit that you're forming, like, the introductions and we're experimenting over here with what works best.
Terrific.
But today we're here to talk about some politics, which is a new thing for us because we haven't discussed any politics over here. But more specifically, you're going to be talking about something that's happening over here in Utah, and that thing is the raise in state food tax by 3.1%. There was a new law that was just passed. And that means that grocery tax will for like West Jordan will double from 3 to 6, and the gas tax will go up about 12 cents per gallon. And we're here to talk about, because I met you today at Utah Natural Meats and Milk Farm store, where you were collecting signatures for the petition.
Wonderful
yes,
people.
And Shane and Kristen, if you're listening to this, I invited them to be on the podcast as well.
Oh, wonderful!
Because
I love
that's
place.
where we get
Their
our
farm
products.
Is terrific.
Yes, that's where we get our products. And I'll just tell you a little anecdote, and we're going to jump into the topic because it's just queued up in my mind. So my daughter is drinking their milk, which is just phenomenal. Raw milk, full whole milk with cream and just
enzymes intact.
Everything. And one time we ran out, and so my wife went to the store, but like top of line, organic, everything the best. And my daughter just poured herself some milk, and she's like, "Ew, yucky! I want the real milk." And so we just both cracked up, and it's like she just knows because it just tastes like liquid ice cream. It's just so good. So anyway,
great.
So I really adore what they do, and I'm going to have them on the show over here. I invited them. Hopefully they're going to be my guest, and we're going to talk about as well about food and how they grow things and how we can support local farmers and everything. So that's
terrific. Ask them how all the hoops they had to jump through to get where they are. They're troopers. They're wonderful.
I'm so happy that they're thriving. The community is supporting them. I buy stuff exclusively over there if I can help it. If they don't run out.
Right. Grass-fed meat. Yeah, they run out of milk. They
run out of milk, and like calling in, it's like, oh, no more milk, and then I have to sometimes
meat and everything just top notch.
So this is a perfect segue. So from that food to the food tax. So let's talk about that.
Speaking of that, their milk will be taxed.
Yeah. So tell us more about this law that was passed.
So this was passed. Governor Herbert, called a special session a couple weeks before Christmas, and they passed this legislation. It's called SB 2001, Senate Bill 2001, and it's a tax restructuring. So they it's touted as a tax cut, but those of us who have looked at it see that it's clearly it's not a tax cut, and it's not good legislation in my opinion, and a lot of us feel the same way. But let me reiterate some of the stuff you've said. So one of the things is the food tax. So unprepared food, just your groceries, are going up 3.1% all over the state. This is all over the statewide. And so yeah, like you say, in West Jordan, our local taxes were 1.25%, and the state tax was 1.75. Put them together, that was a 3% food tax. So with the state tax going up to 4.85, that's a 3.1% increase. So now our food tax will go from 3 to 6.1. So more than doubling in West Jordan, and other cities are in a similar situation. The gas tax for regular people goes up about 12 cents a gallon. And diesel fuel, though, also is going up. And you and I both know that will also affect food prices. And I don't
because
see
of transportation and
absolutely the trucks going back and forth. People in rural areas of Utah will be really hurt by the gas tax increase because they go further to get to their jobs or to anything they're doing. In fact, Kristen over at Utah Natural Meats was explaining that they do a lot of, obviously, transportation in their business, and that's really going to hurt them. One of the most alarming things is they're starting to tax services that have never been taxed. So things, and these aren't frivolous things. This is not yacht rental. These are things like car towing. So if your car breaks down, now you're going to pay more for that tow. I don't understand that at all. Home security monitoring, identity theft protection, movie streaming. So there's several specific things that they've decided to tax, and I can't find any rhyme or reason for it.
They're going to tax. Well, I guess they already are. Is this already?
It has been passed.
Passed?
So yeah, some of it goes into effect in April, and we'll feel the effects of it very soon.
Okay.
Now, so let me explain. What they've done is say, well, but wait. What we're doing is, if you're mid to low income, we've given you, and this is the language they use. We're giving you this. They act like it's their money, which really gets us kind of riled up. But they're giving us a grocery rebate of $125 per person for the first 4 people in your family, $50 a person thereafter.
How does that rebate work?
Good question. So it is what's called a refundable tax credit, which means even if you owe 0 taxes, you still will get this rebate. So some tax credits just lower the taxes you owe. So if you don't owe any, you won't get anything. This is not that. You will still get that. But if you're in a certain income bracket, you can have that. So the thing is, so here is me. I'm not quite in that bracket. So I won't get that tax credit. But my son, and we can claim him on our taxes if we want. He's up at college. So a lot of people with their kids up at college, they're claiming them on their taxes. So the kid's not filing, but the parents don't qualify for the rebate, and the kid's up there buying his own groceries. He's got to pay the extra tax. So that's rough on them. And if you're out of the tax bracket where you don't qualify for the rebate, but you're taking care of your sick mother-in-law, or my friend has a brother who needs a lot of, he needed dental work, just the family's chipping in. It's not like, oh, if you're making a certain amount of money, we know exactly how you're doing. No, the legislature doesn't know how we're doing. They don't know how we're doing, what we're doing with our money, whether we're fine on what we earn. It's not their business to decide who gets it and who doesn't. So, they keep claiming, oh, no, don't worry, we're giving that back. And I thought, well, if you're giving it back, why don't you not take it in the first place?
Right, which is a great question.
It is a good question.
So what are your thoughts on that? Someone should ask them probably, right?
Wouldn't it be nice? Governor Herbert, Harmon's opened up their doors to all of us who are collecting signatures to get this thing on the ballot in November so we can repeal it. We are collecting signatures right now to do that all over the state by the thousands. And Harmon's, bless their hearts, they opened their stores up and said, come in here and collect signatures. Well, Governor Herbert made it clear he did not like that. And he said, if only Harmon's had come to us before doing this, we could have explained how great this new tax is, that it's really a tax cut. And I thought, Governor Herbert, if you had come to me before December, I could have explained to you really simply that we don't want a food tax, and just kick this in the head. We simply don't want food tax raised. It's as simple as that. We don't want the numbers. We don't have to need to run numbers to see if am I going to benefit from this or not. This isn't the point. We don't want food tax raised. If there was a law that said everybody on Karen Hyatt Street has to give her $100 at the end of the year, I would benefit from that, wouldn't I? But I would vote no, because that's wrong. That's bad legislation, and this is bad legislation.
Maybe I should invite the governor and talk to him as well.
Bring it. No, really. I don't know him personally. I don't know if they're confused, or it doesn't seem like it. It seems very disingenuous. Sutherland Institute got in on the act just this week and bought these full page ads.
So it's a full page ad. Says truth
telling
about
here's
160
really
million
don't
tax
sign
cut.
that. So they're saying no, this tax restructuring is good.
Can you just tell the audience what you're reading for those who are listening to this instead of watching?
Yeah.
So it's a full page.
Oh yeah, right. So it says truth about the $160 million tax cut is how they phrase it, because to them it's a tax cut for us all. And so it says offers $500 tax credit for groceries for a family of 4. And they don't quite say if you're in a certain income group. And then it says puts $510 back in your pocket. A family of 4 could see more than a $500 total tax reduction. These phrases like could. Yeah, they could, or they might not.
Right.
It just depends on so many issues. And then at the bottom it says it increases funding for public schools, and it increases the funding for social services. Now, I mean, either it's costing us or it's not. And if it's a tax cut for us, I'd love to know how they're having more money.
Right.
This is really magical, what they got going here. So it's a shell game. They're moving it from here to there and there to here and trying to tell us that it's a tax cut when it's not a tax cut for most of us. And they're going by their averages. How do they know how do they know if I have 2 toddlers or 2 strapping young football players as my children? It's going to be different for all these families, and you can't go by averages. If you're really trying to say, no, it's a cut, well then don't raise it in the first place. It's as simple as that.
So it's a cut, and at the same time they're raising the state food tax by 3.1%. Which in some places that's basically 100% up in terms of taxation.
That's true.
As in West Jordan.
The effective tax, yeah.
Effective tax. How did you get into this? How did you get into, what this show is about, meeting and talking with interesting people. And to me it's striking.
Interesting subject, at least. Is that past?
Well, it's an interesting person. Let me qualify that, because I think there is behind a interesting subject is an interesting person, because when I walk into to a store and I see someone who's doing this, and unless they're getting paid by some kind of other organization,
Nope.
Which is, I assume that
Right.
you're
So you're like, why are you doing
right.
that?
Why are you doing this? So what is the history of that? What is your story? Why are you so? You're spending your own time, your weekend, sitting over there talking to people and getting them informed about it. To me, that's interesting, because what are the motivating factors? What made you do that?
That's a great question. Okay, I am passionate about freedom. So when something comes to my attention that I can do something about, there's plenty in that barrel of I can't do anything about it. But if something comes to my attention that I can do something about, I'll do what I can. So I could see that this was something that I could help influence and help contribute to, as well as there's thousands and thousands of volunteers all over the state doing exactly what I'm doing. I just drove 2 hours there and 2 hours back down to Salina, Utah, to drop off more signature books, because so we're collecting signatures with these referendum petitions. A referendum is something that repeals a piece of legislation. An initiative puts it on the ballot, a referendum repeals it. So this is for a referendum for this law that's already been passed. So we're going around collecting signatures all over the state. We need 116,000 throughout the state, and we are on track to get that, I believe. The numbers won't be solid, won't come in from the clerks for a while here, but I think we're on track. And there are thousands of volunteers all over the state doing this. So these guys down in Utah, you can't mail in your signature. You can mail in a ballot, but you can't mail in a signature for this. You can't do it online. You have to do it in person. It has to be witnessed. So these guys down in southern Utah ran out of books because they were all signed, and they wanted more, and I had some, so I thought, well, why not? So one guy from Moab drove 2 hours to Salina, and I thought, he's crazy. If he's crazy enough to do that, I'm crazy enough to go down and meet him. So I drove 2 hours from West Jordan down there, and we met up with the guy in Salina and gave them both books and just gave each other a hug, because it was like, thanks, you guys, and it's just fun to work on it together. It's really people from all, doesn't matter what party you're from, it doesn't matter anything, your income level, nobody likes this.
Right, this is affecting whichever party you are subscribing to or not subscribing at all. Nobody wants food tax, especially one that maybe it's not as easily explained. Why is this happening?
Right.
Why do you think they are raising this tax? I mean, let me play sort of devil's advocate on this. Utah is growing by leaps and bounds. There's more and more people. So one could
Right.
argue, say that, hey, you know what? We need more. We need more infrastructure. We need more of everything because there's more people coming in.
Right.
So we need to raise food tax as well.
That is an excellent point. In Karen land, there'd probably be a consumption tax. There probably wouldn't be any property tax. I think that's a horrible way to tax people, that you never really own your home with property tax, right?
Oh boy.
You think you've paid it off even, but if you don't give the government a couple thousand a year, they'll take it away.
Yeah, you don't
so
own it.
literally you don't own your property anymore. Income tax, I'm really not a fan of that. Although on a state level, if that's how they want to collect taxes, that's constitutional. The federal constitution doesn't prohibit that. There's not supposed to be a federal income tax. Just throwing that in. That's probably a story for another day. But that was specifically written into the Constitution, that the federal government would not be able to tax individuals. They would just be able to say, Utah, you owe us this much, collect it however you want. But we are far, far afield, right? We're completely far away from that. But but when you say, we're growing, so what about this infrastructure? Don't we need to build it up? And of course, if the more people that come here, we need more roads, we need more homes, and we need more, water supplies to them, and everything that you can think of. But here's my question. When somebody like Amazon, who they're just building their ginormous facility down the street from me, and so they come here, why do they come here? They come here because they've been enticed to come here because our state government says, if you come here, we won't charge you certain taxes. We'll give you lots of tax breaks to come here. So you lure them here with low taxes, not their fair share, and then you tell me, oh, look at all the new people that are here. I have to tax you for all the new roads. That's really messed up. That's just really messed up. So, their claim with taxing services for the first time, well, we need to broaden the tax base. Well, is that broadening the tax base to give these giant companies tax breaks and put these carrots in front of them? Please come here. And then once all these new employers are here, and they come from out of state a lot of times, and they build here, and all of a sudden, roads are not doing the trick anymore. We got to expand them, but not with their tax dollars, with mine.
So, like in my thinking, when you have new employees, new state residents, right? Because people will move in over here. There's going to be jobs for local population, but there's going to be people moving into state of Utah because it's cheaper to live over here than in a lot of places, than California for sure.
Yeah.
And you're from California
I know,
originally, and
firsthand.
so you've moved over here some time ago, so you've probably seen the growth of the state and how. So the state is going to have more income tax. So shouldn't that be the source for them to then be able to use into building infrastructure?
Exactly. It should keep up. I mean, if they're going to do an income tax, a flat tax would be terrific. So that you're not taxing people at different rates, and corporations can't say, oh, gee whiz, we get a break on our. It's not fair. You need to do an equitable tax for everybody. Whatever tax system you choose for your state, it needs to be equitable and not give breaks to certain people and special interest groups and corporations that it's not fair. And I'm not sure what the legislature gets out of it when they do that. People ask me, well, why are they doing this? I said, I don't know. I can speculate. I can imagine that they're getting kickbacks. I can imagine that perhaps they're getting campaign contributions from some of these corporations for whom they carve out niches like that and tax breaks. But I don't, I haven't delved into look if that's totally true all the time, but that's my only guess. That's my only guess. There's no other reason.
So what you're doing with collecting signatures for this petition, what happens next? So you get 116,000.
Yeah,
Why 116,000?
Okay, that's 8% of the total population in Utah.
Quite a number.
It's just under 116,000. And the rule is, so there's two thresholds. The overall 8% for the state, but that couldn't come from just one little place, which I agree with. That's good. So there's a regulation that says that half, so 15, there's 29 counties in Utah, 15 at least of those have to contribute 8% of their registered voters. 8% of their registered voters have to sign this thing in at least 15 counties. That's what I was worried about, because you've got these counties way off the beaten path, and it's hard to get physical books to them. It's hard to keep track of that. They're doing it. So right now, I will say unofficially, I'll just take responsibility for this statement. From the numbers I've seen, I think we've got 17 counties. We're done with that part of it. So now it's just sheer numbers. We just need to get to that 116,000 mark, and we are doing it. There's a Facebook page with 25,000 volunteers on it. And I thought, if each one collected 5 signatures, we're done. So I'm excited, and I expect to see it on the ballot. If it doesn't get on the ballot, I will be shocked and suspicious. It looks really good. I've never seen them fired up about anything in my life so much as this. My husband said, if this doesn't get on the ballot, you can't get something on the ballot. And I agree, because I've never seen people so excited.
This affects everyone. Everyone needs to eat, as far as I know.
We sit at Macy's or we sit at Harmon's at our table collecting, and just people, we're constantly helping them.
Have you been ever not welcomed by a business where you wanted to set up a table and collect these?
So Smith's, some volunteers have tried us up at Smith's and have been told no. My understanding, or our best guess, I guess I should say, is that they are a multi-state corporation, so maybe they don't want to have anything to do with any sort of local initiatives at all. So I can understand it. It's their prerogative. It's not a problem.
Well, Santa has a way in. It seems like Santa can get into Smith's.
That's right. So, but Harmon's, bless their hearts, they started that, and then Associated Food Stores came along after that, Macy's and Dan's and others. So, and they've been wonderful. We just go, a lot of times they'll have a table already for us. Harmon's has a table out with red tablecloth and their own handouts, and they're wonderful. So yeah, it's happening everywhere. You can go to any Harmon's pretty much in the whole state and sign.
So what happens next when you collect? Who's going to be counting these? How is that going to be accounted for, so no one can question the integrity of this mechanism of collecting the petition?
Right. So each county clerk is responsible for verifying the signatures of people in their counties. So, for instance, Salt Lake County clerks are just getting scads of these books turned in all the time. And they go through signature by signature and look at their registration records and make sure they're really a registered voter in the state. Doesn't matter, anybody from any county can sign this book anywhere in the state. But eventually the correct county clerk will be verifying their voter registration. And
do we need to pay them? Or is that part of their job?
That's part of their job. So a lot of them are, I've found a few, not in Salt Lake. My experience with the Salt Lake clerks is they're stellar. They're wonderful. They're showing me how they're doing their best to match signatures, even if they're not too readable, even if the print isn't too readable. Mm-hmm. They still look up the address, and if they then can say, oh yeah, I can see that's Joe Peterson. Okay, I'll pass that signature. They're not looking to throw them out or anything like that. They're not trying. But there are a few grumpy ones. So I've had friends go to a clerk, and the clerk said, this is a lot of work for me. And the lady said, well, I've canvassed my whole neighborhood to get those signatures. It was a lot of work for me too, So everybody's doing their best, and I get that it is more work for them.
So then after the clerks count and you have a official count, do they get together? Who's tabulating all these, 29 counties? Who's getting the final number?
That's a great question. I don't know how it's submitted to the state legislature, but the numbers will be, the legislature will be able to see what numbers have been approved. There's maybe it's a very low, they call it spoilage rate, 3% maybe, of signatures that either absolutely aren't readable and the address doesn't match, or they turn out to not be registered, or things like that. Or they've signed twice, that gets thrown out quickly. Right. So anything like that, but it's a very low spoilage rate, so they're doing a good job, and they will tally those, and if it's over the 116,000, it will appear on the ballot in November. And so by then, people need to, between now and November, need to get informed and understand exactly what is in this. There's a couple good things in this. And for those, how about if you make a bill just with those? Just make a single issue bill for the things that we like and pass that. That's a lot simpler. This thing is 6,000 lines. And if I can digress, go off on a tangent here a little bit, on the petition, we have to print the petitions at our own expense, and we have to print them according to statute. Like, this shall be this far from the margin. This column shall be 0.75 inches wide. And every square on that petition is exactly according to law that's written down, okay? Wow. So the date field, people usually find it's a little chintzy, but you can't change it because it's by law. And one lady had a county clerk get out a ruler. So anyway, that doesn't happen very often. But the thing is, if you and I want to look up the bill online, we go look up the bill, and it's got section 1, subsection A, subsection II, subsection III, and it is, convoluted, of course, it's in legalese, but it's not tabbed in. All those subsections that should be tabbed in, 1 and 2 and 3 tabs, so you can go from section to section easily, it's all left justified all the way down. You can't read it. I looked at that and I thought, you're kidding. I asked Kim Coleman, who's my representative in the House, and I said, do you get a better copy of this? It's tabbed nicely so you could read it. She says, I get what you get. This is unbelievable that the date field would be legislated as 3/4 of an inch wide while they can provide us this garbage that's absolutely unreadable. So I'm a giant nerd. I took it and I copied and pasted and tabbed it in. I don't want to tell you how many hours I spent tabbing that in so I could actually read the thing, because it would be embarrassing to tell you how long I spent on that. But that's what I did, because I wanted to read it. So I've probably read about 4,000 lines of this thing. It's horrific. But, you and I can't, it's the system's set up against us. We can't read it if we want to. One of the clerks, when she got a packet handed to her, said, oh, and all these people read this bill. Kind of sarcastic, snarky, And I wished I had been there. I would have said every bit as much as the legislators did. They've got aides to sum up things for them. I don't have an aide. If I want to look at it, I got to slog through that. Anyway.
Right. How does a petition start? Like, what are the origins of this? Do you have information on how that started?
A little bit. So,
who gets the credit?
Yeah.
What's the name or names?
I'm going to say Fred Cox. He's wonderful. And there's a bunch. There's George McMezian. There's several of them that are really astute, and they're looking out for us. And they're not our elected. So they're, I guess, citizen activists, freedom fighters as well, but they're just they've got their eye on the legislators more than most of us have time or inclination to do. And somehow, Fred was aware of this thing. They had discussions about it, but where do you hear that reported? They say, well, you had a chance to chime in. I had never heard about it till my friend started posting on Facebook. Tammy Bills, she started posting on, what is she going on about? And I looked, oh my goodness. So I didn't hear about it until just a couple of weeks ago. But Fred, he was aware of it. And when it passed, I looked this up and I found that in order to initiate a referendum like this, you have to start that filing within 5 days of the thing passing. So you don't have a big window. Wow. So he jumped right in there, and this is at Christmas time. I don't think this is what Fred wanted to be doing at Christmas, but bless his heart. So he's in there, and a couple different groups filed, and one was thrown out. You have to have at least 6 people to file that initial referendum petition. And one of the groups, of their 6, 2 of them had not voted in the last 3 general elections, and therefore were not eligible to apply for this, which I thought that was appalling, that they could decide that you have to vote in the general election. Even if there's nobody that you care for or nothing that you care about, and you want to let everyone else go ahead and express their opinions, you can't do that.
So suddenly, like, if you haven't voted in general election, you can't start a petition.
Correct.
This is kind of a penalty for
not participating, I guess, is the idea. Right. It's like, well, maybe I voted in when it counted in the primaries, and my guy didn't make it, and then I didn't care. What about that? So I didn't. That's not very palatable to me. Now, but anyway,
So you start
the
a
one
petition.
group, theirs was nullified, but Fred and his group.
So multiple groups started
two.
that
There was two.
concurrently, and they so 6 signatures. So and then you file it with the local clerk, local
That's a great
municipality.
question. And now you're out of my league. Now now you're above my pay grade. No, I don't know how that's done. There are regulations. I did look up a little bit of that, and it's a lot of fun to slog through that as well. But yeah, he knows it. He's been involved in this for a long time.
So once it's on the record, it's an officially approved, accepted, acknowledged
and
petition.
then you're free to go ahead and collect signatures.
You go on and where do you get these notebooks or these?
So they printed out 5,000. Fred and his group, printed out 5,000 to start with, which would equal like 245,000 signatures, like twice what we would need. But as we collect signatures, we don't really need to fill the book necessarily. So some books will get turned in half full, maybe, if someone can't collect anymore and they're done. And
who sponsored that?
Okay, so they ran a fund, fundraising. They did fundraising, and wonderful, kind people would donate $5 or $25 or $100, and so they collected. I can't remember. I better not say, but it was in the tens of thousands that they collected to have these printed out. And I don't know how much that cost to print out 5,000, but.
And how much time do you have?
A month.
A month.
It was only a month. That shocked me.
So a law is passed. You got 5 days to petition.
Yeah.
And then you have a month to collect.
Yeah, and this is approximate. I'm not. I don't know if it's 30 days or what, but all I know is the deadline. So this was mid-December that this thing was passed, but our deadline for collecting signatures is January 21st. That's Tuesday. They all have to be turned into the clerks this Tuesday. So
for those of you who care about paying less or more for your food,
please go to a Harmon's.
Please go to Harmon's.
Harmon's are packed this weekend with volunteers collecting signatures. If you don't know, let's see, go to my Facebook page, Karen Hyatt, and go there, and there's information on there. Message me, and I'm happy to direct you wherever you need to go if you can't find another way. But yeah, Harmon's stores have been great. Macy's, a lot of the Macy's have been great, and very likely one of your neighbors will know a little bit.
How does this group of people sort of self-organize the way you did?
That's a great question. So Facebook is really helpful, but it's not just click, click, click. You just don't click it and it goes viral magically and everyone signs. It's hard because part of it is, like I say, they require that these be signed in person and by one witness. And so I have a book, if I have a signature book, I can't just give it to someone else, go pass it around your club or whatever. I have to keep it with me and witness every signature.
So it's a
in
sort
person.
of chain of custody that kind of follows along with this.
Yeah, exactly. And we have a record of who's got every book. They're all individually numbered. So, you get on Facebook and you just start and you say, look, this is what happened. Let me sum up the bill for you. Here's where you go read it in person. If you're interested, talk to us. If you can collect signatures. So they have, they got spreadsheets full of volunteers just saying, yes, I can collect signatures, or I can't collect signatures, but I'm happy to keep track of the books and hand them out to people in my area, all sorts of stuff like that. And people have been wonderful, really.
What a wonderful example of citizen participation and citizen activity to support empowerment.
I'm so excited. I want this to be on there for so many reasons, not just because it's bad law, not just because it's a bad way to tax, but it's a message. We're here. We really do. We're willing to get you out of there. We're willing to go against what you say. You're not our paternal. They have this idea that they're sort of a father figure and their children don't understand what a great thing this is. And I think that is so condescending. It's very shocking to find out that they don't see themselves, and I can't speak for every single one, but literally one man I talked to, he was talking to his rep's aide, and the aide was like, well, it's kind of like in a family when the kids don't really understand and the parents have to explain it. And that was so offensive. Thought, wow, they don't understand that they are are employees, at
Public
least,
servants.
or servants even, but they think they're our parents. That is messed up. So I love this message. I hope it sends a wonderful message that
It is
they can't
empowering.
do this.
I really applaud you for doing this. When I saw you doing it, I was like, oh my goodness, I have to talk to you. Because it takes in this super busy age that we live in, where we are constantly just busy with something. It's work, it's life, and people just don't have that amount of time to dedicate to something like that. You're an entrepreneur. You'll have your own business. You have time, allocated for making a living. Yet you're taking time out of your life to do this. Yes, it does affect you, but for a lot of people, they will just like, I'll just have to pay more. We'll have to, tighten that belt a little bit more, right? But it's refreshing to see that there are people like you who are going to say, just no, we need to self-organize and we need to repeal a law that's affecting all of us.
I've spent dozens of hours on this, but there are people who have spent hundreds of hours. Fred has spent hundreds of hours and lots of his people. So the credit goes to them, and they are to be lauded. And, if they ran for office, I don't know, could they get elected? Wouldn't it be nice to have, freedom-minded, liberty-minded people in office who understand their role? And it would just look like such a different picture if we could get that kind of people in. And that's going to be the catch. This is going to send a great message for whoever the next governor is. Whether or not it actually gets on the ballot, I am confident it will. But even if it didn't, it's going to be so close, and it is going to send a message like, we're aware. You can't do this. We're going to be on you, and just being vigilant. And so that's what it takes. And you just can't keep voting for the guy with the biggest billboard. That is just not working. You can't do that. You've got to vet him. You've got to look at his voting record. And if they have voted badly, you can't say, well, I bet he meant to vote good. That's not fair to everyone else. I'm sure these guys are all wonderful grandfathers and grandmothers, or fathers and mothers, whatever. I'm sure of it. But that's not the basis on which you should vote for someone. You should look at their voting record. And it's, maybe it's not the easiest thing, but it's a lot easier than it was when all you had was Walter Cronkite telling you what's going on, right? You've got the internet right at your fingertips. Get on there and look at their voting record. Maybe it'll take you half an hour or an hour to look up how to do that.
So let's speak about that for a second, because internet is a double-edged sword, right? You have the information and the misinformation, and you have all those forces out there, and for some it may be difficult to discern what's real, what's not real. We have we have the whole thing with Russians influencing our elections and all these forces, because it's just so easy, relatively speaking, because it could be done remotely. We can have these bogus things, accounts, and these posts and these riling messages that are stirring people's blood and
they're meant to divide a lot of the times.
That are meant to divide. So where do you get your truth? Where do you get your news? How do you go about discerning what's real and what's
That's a great question. Good question. And without opening a whole can of worms, I have really discovered that the 24/7
That's
television...
next episode, the full can of worms.
Right, the can of worms episode. I'm here. Just invite me back. I have discovered that the 24/7 TV news is not... It doesn't matter, which station you're watching. They're all on the same page. They really are. Anybody who differs from what is said on television news is not going to be able to be on television. They won't allow it. And it is controlled, and that's on record, that there's a very small clique of people that control the media in our country. So if something's on the mainstream news, you can, take it with a grain of salt. You can't trust them as far as you could throw them.
So in that case, what do you do?
Okay, so here is my personal philosophy. Let's just for fun, let's just go out into the weeds for a minute and talk about Syria. All right, Syria. Here. People are like, what does this have to do with this petition in Utah? Well, probably not a lot, but there's a teeny link. Okay, in Syria, we were told that Assad was this just crazy monster gassing his own people. It didn't make any sense. He was trying to get into the UN and get accepted by there, but just when that looked good, he suddenly gassed all his own people. Okay, so you've got all these news sites telling you this. Then you've got independent news people. Some had been over in person in Syria and talked to Syrians personally, and they're saying, no, he didn't do that. This was a completely different wing of people. This was not part of the Syrian government. This was something called the Free Syrian Army, which had nothing to do with the actual Syrian army. There's a completely different group. They're the ones responsible to make it look like Assad did this. It wasn't him. And so, all right, so now you've got these 2 points of view. Obviously, on its face, some of these people have been there in person, and I can't see that they have much to gain by telling lies about that in Assad's favor. That doesn't make any sense to me. They're not Syrians, one of them's a Canadian, Eva Bartlett, and her testimony is invaluable. It's wonderful. But so on its face, I kind of might lean one way, but what's more important is that I have an anchor. I have a measure, and that would be the Constitution. The U.S. Constitution. We don't have authority to go across to someone who hasn't literally come here and declared war and attack them. And so precisely because it's so hard to really assess what's going on in some place so far away, you have got to have something to measure your actions by and something to guide your actions so that you're not just getting riled up, like you say, and they say, oh, this has happened. Oh, then let's all rally for war with all these countries that haven't demonstrably done anything to us, except that's what's told to us. We don't see evidence of it. We don't see records of it. They don't produce any records, but they say these numbers. They say this. We need a drone strike here. We need this here. And we have no way of telling whether that's true or false, but we do have a constitution that tells us how to act. And so if you follow that and if you have that as your guidepost, you're not going to go too far astray. So that's what I base mine on, is let's have principles in place and adhere to them because they work.
So let's take it back. So what I'm hearing is firsthand account, direct knowledge versus many times removed information that's distributed by some kind of huge media network. So
absolutely,
which makes sense if you have that kind of access firsthand or secondhand, so it's close to the source of the information. It's kind of like citing a scientific paper. All these citations have to be direct links to other knowledge, to another source of truth. It is difficult, though, isn't it?
It is, and I am totally sympathetic that people don't know where to go to find a source that they trust. I get that. And that is exactly why, when you don't know, stick to the Constitution. Stick to your moral compass that tells you we shouldn't be out doing these things. So that solves everything, right? You don't have to have firsthand knowledge of what happened in Yemen or Libya or Syria and to do the right thing. If you've got your moral compass is solid and you don't make an exception, you don't say, well, normally we wouldn't do this, but Tucker Carlson says this is what happened, so we better go to war. You don't do that.
But how is the Constitution helping us out, like locally?
Let's
say
not.
in this.
I'm just kidding. That's very cynical. But boy, we just don't follow that anymore. But so here's the wonderful thing about the Constitution. It's a brilliant document. It gave the federal government so few responsibilities and so few powers that the actual size of the federal government was supposed to be minuscule. States were free to run themselves however they wanted. And so, when I feel like I'm really in the weeds here, but, with prohibition.
I'll bring you back.
Oh, good. Good. Get me out of that. So with prohibition, okay, people go, oh, look what happened when you outlaw alcohol. Well, that was federally outlawed. The entire country, it was illegal. That's ridiculous. That was never, if you could search the Constitution with a fine-tooth comb and find no justification for them to pass federal laws on alcohol consumption. Absolutely unconstitutional. So of course it didn't work. However, if a state were to decide we don't want alcohol here, we don't like drunk driving, we don't like this, that, and the other, so we're going to outlaw it on a state level. You know what? Then people that were drinkers wouldn't go to that state, would they? They'd go to somewhere else where they were comfortable. Maybe they're okay with prostitution and gambling and what have you. Go to that state.
That's why we have Vegas.
That's why we have Vegas. So, that was what it was supposed to look like. It's supposed to look like 50 different environments. But with the federal government coming in and telling you everything from, your light bulb wattage to how many gallons you can flush with, they don't look different like they're supposed to. Drug laws, marijuana laws, that's nothing like it in the Constitution. There's no power for the federal government to make anything like that.
It seems like to me, and we're going to come back to the petition.
The local petition.
But I do want to make a point, which is very perplexing to me, which is you have states that now legalize marijuana or legalize certain things, kind of according to the Constitution. Those are the powers, right? People vote locally over there, right? Because it affects them directly. And then yet on a federal level, those are still illegal substances.
Exactly.
What is it, Class 1 or Schedule 1? Schedule 1, I think, is for marijuana, which from my understanding is that it has no use, medical use, which the medical community says, yes, it does. So how do we reconcile that? It's such a perplexing thing for me that, still on a federal level is it's illegal. And that's just an example. I'm not,
there's a lot of things.
There's a lot
exactly.
of things like that which are like illegal on a federal level, but states, so it's just an interesting topic. But let's bring it back to how do we get our news and how do we get our facts? So one of the things that I heard from you is that you literally looked at the legislation. You're leafing through this. You're reading this. That's your direct knowledge, right? So you don't need a news anchor telling you what this law says, because then they have an opportunity, or not even. I'm not even saying it's a malicious
Sometimes
thing. Maybe just everyone can, especially that, like you said, it's a lot of legalese, so it could be misinterpreted by layman's eye.
Amen.
And so you have to make up your own mind. So try to get to a direct source of knowledge if you can.
Yeah, if you possibly can.
Yeah.
And it's no fun to slog through that stuff. I get it. That's no fun at all. But, when you've got two different sides telling you it says completely different things, then you do need to take a look. Or, at the very least, someone trusted to show you, ask them what line it's on. Like, where is that in here? That's funny because this the Sutherland Institute ad says that claiming the grocery tax rebate won't involve any paperwork at all. The check will just be mailed automatically. And I thought, what in the world? Because I read I can read it to you right now. It literally says that if you don't file taxes, but you still qualify for the rebate, that there will be a form to fill out. So I'm like, what in the world? So absolutely opposite information that you get. So sometimes you just got to roll up your sleeves and dig in there and take a look.
Yeah, that takes a lot of time and effort. So it's good to know that there are some people who are taking that head on and organize themselves into groups. And now it's easier to communicate because of tools that we have, social media, where people can kind of connect. So how did you find that group? What's the genesis of you getting involved with this? How did you find a group? Was it through someone? Was it word of mouth? Was it advertising?
My neighborhood Facebook page, I think, or else it was just my neighbor, my friend, Tammy Bills. She lives a couple streets away. I just happened to realize that on my news feed, this non-interesting, very boring looking thing that she kept posting about. And so I looked at it and realized that, it is boring and tedious, but it's important. So that was it, just someone's post popping up on my news feed, and I click on it and actually try to see what it's about and go, whoa, what is this? This is wrong. So
is there a Facebook page that you can recommend or that you follow that's maybe growing into like state, size in terms of people sharing information about this more specifically? I know there's gazillion. That's the other problem of there's too many of them.
Yeah.
So how do you pick the right one? Is it just by the number of members, or is it by activity? How do you?
No, and there aren't very many on this that I know of. The main one. So this is called Utah tax referendum, possibly Utah 2019 tax referendum, one of those.
And that's the name of the Facebook page?
Now there's one that's public and then one for the volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
So that's here's where we need books and stuff like that the general public isn't going to want to hear about. But I apologize, I don't know exactly the name of that.
We'll find that
page.
out.
But yeah, I think you can find it out.
We'll post it in the along with the
in the show notes. That's perfect.
Notes, yeah.
That'll be great. I will provide that to you. So you can, so they'll have locations that you're needed at, if you need to volunteer. Again, we're down to the wire. This has to be turned into the clerks on Tuesday, and Monday's a holiday anyway.
21st, right? Mm-hmm. So it's on Tuesday. By what time?
I've heard 5 o'clock and I've heard 4 o'clock. So I'm sure going to get mine in by 3.
Good idea.
Yeah.
And so what happens when this succeeds?
So it will be on the ballot in November. So between now and then, strive to look at what it really does. To me, if I pick up that Sutherland ad and I see that it says, no, this is a tax cut, and the extra funds will help us do this, that, and the other, I'm already done. Like, that doesn't make a bit of sense, to say it's a tax cut and the extra funds are going to help us do this, that, and the other. That makes no sense right there. So to me, I am not a fan of these 6,000-page bills covering everything from tractor regulations to is a bagel a takeout food. You wouldn't believe what's in this thing. If you have a fork with the food, it means that you're intending to eat it elsewhere, not on the premises, so it's taxed differently. It's crazy. It's such a bunch of tiny little things.
Amazing.
And if you have a recycling facility, then you're taxed totally different. If you happen to be a mining company, then you don't need to pay sales tax on your equipment. How is that broadening the base? So I looked at this and I just said, garbage. I'm done. So if they want to pass some of the things that are good about it, like I said, there's a tiny handful of things that are good. One has to do with Social Security taxes and things like this. Pass those as individual bills. I'm totally behind it. But none of this nonsense where it's just a shell game, moving things from here to there to there.
A lot of it just running under the roof of one legislation.
Yeah. So pretending to be one bill when it's 6,000 lines of just this, that, and the other.
Multiple bills. They should be separate ones. So November, this is on a ballot, and then people can vote.
Yes, but vote to repeal.
Mm-hmm. So that's the end effect of this.
Be careful how they word that. It's not. They're not above wording it in a tricky way so that you think you're voting against it when you're voting for it, and that thing. So you want to repeal SB 2001.
So that would be winning sort of phase one. The battle would be won and it'd be repealed, but then it has to be the legislation will have to be reformatted, changed, modified.
Right.
How does
if they do want to restructure the tax, what all of us, I think universally, what we want is to see them cut spending. If we thought they were doing the very best they could with the funds that we've given them, we might feel differently, but they're not. I'm as big a fan of Hale Center Theater as anybody. I love it, think they're brilliant, but I don't think the state of Utah has any business subsidizing that in any way, shape, or form. My ticket shouldn't cost less when I go because you paid a little bit of it and didn't go. That
Makes sense.
Ludicrous. And that happens over and over and over. There's all kinds of things that should be funded by tickets or just philanthropic contributions. And that happens. And people say, well, this art thing would never happen if it wasn't for the government paying for it. Baloney. Of course, there's a lot of things that I would contribute to that I have contributed to that don't benefit me, but I think it's a good cause, and so I benefit. People will contribute if it's something valuable. And you can do all sorts of fundraisers now. My word, there's GoFundMe, there's all sorts of things to get money for things that people think are worthy without having the government take it at gunpoint. People have to realize that when it's a law, that means you get fined, get your property taken away, or you go to jail if you don't conform. You can't say that Hale Center Theater qualifies for something like that, right?
So what we're talking about over here is market forces and like true capitalism,
Yeah.
not biased, not crony, not influenced, but true market forces. If people want to be patrons of a business or of a art institution or a theater, by supporting them in
Yes.
different ways, that's how they're going to make that institution thrive and go on, and not by some kind of distributed tax that's going to kind of just shove that money into that institution to make it
Absolutely.
exist.
Yeah. And people get caught up by saying, yeah, but a rec center is good. It helps people be healthier. Well, yeah. And they can also pay full price for using the swimming pool or whatever it costs to really
Whenever they
run it
choose to.
without government subsidizing stuff like that. Whether it's local, your city, your county, your state, federal government, there's no business. They have no business competing with the private sector. Essentially your rec center is competing with Vasa Gym, right? Like that's not right.
So this is going to be probably another episode when we talk about market forces, and I know we talked a little bit offline over here about some of those things, which I find very fascinating. Although I am kind of, I guess, anxious a little bit about diving into politics because it's such a loaded and charged space.
There you go.
But we did talk about one thing that I'm emboldened to talk about because I think we kind of stand on the same side on it, and it's this mentality of this applying these sports team mentality of like
Right.
Here's my team, here's your team. You're Republican, Democrat, whatever, A or B, and we have this. It's either this or this, and not some kind of union of ideas and things. And
Exactly.
I was just
I have
wondering, where
I
you
have
stand.
a R after my name. You have to have a D after yours. So that's it. We're not friends. Yeah.
Right.
It's very.
How do we combat that, or how do we not even combat? That sounds wrong, but how do we change that?
Right.
So people don't have that mentality of like, oh, I'm in this camp. This is my team. This is your team. Now, game on, right? Whoever wins takes the
Absolutely.
spoils and goes on.
Yeah. It's very divisive, and I assure you, it is meant to be that way, because a divided people is an easily conquered people. It's an easily governed people. They will allow a lot more government if they think that it's going to go against their enemies. Then they want that cruddy legislation that they would probably oppose if it was, presented by the other guy. So it's you have to be aware that this is done on purpose, and try to think outside the box. To me, Republican and Democrat are too often two wings of the same bird.
I love that. I don't know if you came up with it or if you want to
I'm
credit
sure
someone.
I did not. I'm sure I did not.
But I
I
love
listened
that.
to a lot of smart people, and I'm 99% sure that didn't come out of my head. But it's like you said, it's a very good picture. It's a good analogy because really it is. It's the same, and you got to realize that there's Republicans and Democrats that are all on the same page for a lot of things, and over on the other side is freedom and liberty, and the R and the D don't want anything to do with that a lot of times.
Right. I when you said that, the R and D, the Republican Democratic parties, the two wings of the same bird. I literally envisioned that, and I think that would be such a powerful image. And if no one has done it, and you came up with it, we
I did not.
credit
I did
you,
not.
whoever came up with that. I mean, that would be a wonderful visual
That
to
is, isn't
use
it?
as a symbol, because the bald eagle being the national symbol of bird, and you know what happens to a bird if you're going to chop off one of its arm? It's not going to fly very well. It's just going to
Right.
tumble down to the ground. So
Yeah.
I think that's a very powerful
and it's so
imagery.
interesting what our what our U.S. Congress will do. All the Democrats get so in an uproar if a Republican president does X, Y, and Z. But then when it switches over and the Democrat guy is doing the X, Y, and Z, then they're okay with it. And now the Republicans are mad. So it has very little to do with what's actually going on, and more to do with what's that letter after their name.
Right, and in the end, it's the individual and specific laws that are affecting everyone. So bringing everything back to this food tax increase, that's affecting, that's nonpartisan thing. That will affect Republicans, Democrats,
Everyone.
and anybody else, independents, anybody and everybody.
I've never seen people come together so unanimously on anything in my life. You've got, Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, Constitutionalists, you know, angry people who are fired up. One guy walks in, is this where I signed to tell Governor Herbert where to go? Okay, you know, I guess. And then some people are sweet little old ladies, and they're like, I don't want food tax. You know, they're just all over the spectrum, but nobody likes this.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about your experience doing this. What kind of people you met? What were some of the surprising things, good and bad? Give me some of the stories.
All kinds.
I want to kind of share that with. What is it like to be a volunteer such as yourself doing this
That's
work?
a really good question. You know, it's so easy, and this is hilarious that I would be sitting here with you as if I have anything to do with this. Honestly, like I said, saw my friend's post, jumped in. Hey, how can I help? I saw a couple things that I thought could go better, like can we get some communication here or there? And, you know, it's a group effort. Everyone's making suggestions. So next thing you know, they're coordinated all sorts of things. Not because I said it, but I'm saying there was a lot of suggestions from the group to do this and that and coordinate better. And so all of a sudden here they're, having all sorts of runs down to, somebody says, well, I can't collect signatures, but I go down to Sevier County all the time. So if you want something delivered down there, let me know. Here's a packet of books, go. And so that was his contribution, and somebody else does something else. These are just regular people. They're not politically active normally. Tons of people have said, this is the first thing I've ever done, politically or in my community in any way. And it's great. Jump in anytime because it's not complicated. And you don't have to be a politically minded person to do this, quote unquote, right? You can just be a regular person who happens to care about this thing and just could take out a petition. My daughter has a little baby and she was like, well, give me. And I said, oh, my word, you're so busy with him. Are you kidding? You don't want to, go around your neighborhood and people aren't home in the day. You'll have to go out in the dark. She says, Mom, I live kind of near, everybody's retired here. They're all going to be home during the day. Give me the packet. So I gave it to her and she filled the thing up. Another little old lady, my dear friend, Carlene, said, give me a packet. I'll take it to my bowling league. There's like 14 teams with four ladies each. She filled the thing in one afternoon bowling.
Amazing.
So bless their hearts. I mean, she'd never done anything like that. So it's not hard. You just don't be afraid to just jump in and say, is there something I can do? Here's, I only have 2 hours a week. What do you want me to do? Easy.
Get involved, get online, find those groups where you can connect with people to do this, and then meet them in person. How did you start? Like, how did you get the books in your hands for the petitions? Where was it like organized? You joined on Facebook somewhere, and
I said, where can I get a book?
Yeah.
They gave me the name of a lady in South Jordan. I live in West Jordan. I drove to her house, and she signed me out. You've taken books number da 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 through da da da, and then. When they could see that I had a little more time than I have a little more time than the average person. My kids are grown and I don't have a full-time job. So I feel like it's kind of on me to give more time since I have more time. So when they saw that, then they're like, well, then can you distribute some books? So I would drive books to where they needed to be and things like that and, recruit other helpers. But there are hundreds, there are thousands doing just what I'm doing. So I'm not special. There's many people doing exactly this, just with whether they have 2 hours a week or 15 hours a week, whatever it is. And like I said, some of them a lot more. I don't know when some of them are sleeping.
And it makes a difference. It must feel really good when you're hearing that this has a lot of traction, that this has a really
Absolutely.
It's almost in the bag that this is going to go through in terms of collection of and it must feel so good that you were part of that. So that's kind of part of your payoff. How do you feel about that? Like when
Wonderful.
you see.
I love the message. Like I said, at the very least, it sends a message to the next governor. You can't do this. We're paying attention. And we can't pay attention every second of the day, but we've got some watchdogs and they'll alert us and then we're going to become active. And so just don't do it in the first place. You know, that's the message.
You mentioned some names of some people that were super active.
Yeah.
Do you want to, anybody else do you want to sort of give a shout out to and thank for, or maybe, yeah, just mention them. Anybody else who do we connect with? Who does the audience connect with online, on Facebook? With you, we're going to have your contact info, and then probably on your page.
Yeah, this is true.
Other.
I was regularly posting things on my page, so I'll give you that link, you know, just for fun. That's just my normal Facebook page. You'll see stuff about cupcakes and you'll see stuff about the referendum. It's kind of a spread. But yeah, Lisa Shepard is involved in the core group, Fred Cox and George McMezian and Rebecca Campbell, really, and there's many others, and I don't know all their names. And I don't need to, you know what I mean?
Right.
You don't need to. You don't need to know these people firsthand. You just need to know a friend of a friend of a friend, and can you get me a book? You know, that kind of thing. And I don't just mean for this, just anything in the future. Don't be afraid. You know, that'd be my message. Like, don't be afraid to just dip your toe in. A lot of times that's all it takes. If you tell 10 friends, you're good. You know, you got 10 friends to go sign this thing, perfect.
Right.
If everyone did that, my goodness.
If 10 friends tell their 10 friends, that's 100 friends right there, and it just grows exponentially.
It really does.
What people can do now, still before the 21st, to support, other than go to Harmon's and sign these? Is it too late to become a volunteer? It sounds like there's already a lot of volunteers.
There are a lot of volunteers. I will say that at this point, go sign if you haven't. Really, that is the number one thing you do. And if you can talk to 3 friends who haven't signed and bring them with you, that's perfect. That's exactly what we need. So I had several people today go to different Harmon stores, go to a Macy's store, and find that they were already manned completely. And, you know, they had more volunteers than so that's wonderful to be collecting.
Refreshing.
Yeah, it is so wonderful. And at this point, we're starting to say, hey, have you heard about that? Oh, yeah, I already signed. So that's what we're getting now. And it's wonderful. But it doesn't matter where you live. Every signature in the state at this point counts just as much as the others. It doesn't matter where you are.
Right.
The county quotas are taken care of. So it's just sheer numbers to get us past the 116. Honestly, please take us past the 200,000 mark. That would make my day. That's
solid.
what I want. I want it such a solid message. We said no to this. We've told you in the past we don't want food tax raised, and we sure don't want it raised in a special session right before Christmas. That's just naughty. So let's give them a message, right?
I love it.
Just behave.
I love it. Karen, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you want to add or send a message? I'd love to have you again on the show. You're just...
I'll be happy to come back. You are so wonderful. I just think that was so serendipitous today that you should be... I was only at Utah Natural Meats for half an hour today, but you happened to be there right then. So I just thought that was wonderful. That just worked out perfectly.
I think so,
and
too.
I appreciate the invitation.
So too. And maybe something was primed in my brain as well, because a couple of days ago I did talk to a friend of mine who's similarly to your activity, an active citizen activist who's doing similar things, but in Connecticut, and it's very refreshing, and to see this kind of empowerment, and I don't know if it's a movement yet, but it feels like people are coming back from this disillusioned state, this like, hey, you know what, somebody else is going to deal with it, and then just anything rolls because nobody pays attention. So it's good to see that people are getting back on the horse, so to speak, and starting to look at things and getting becoming active politically, or just in your own community, connecting and caring, and
realizing that they have power. They really do have power. Just your average run-of-the-mill neighbor, and it's funny to refer to me as an activist, because I just don't think of myself that way. I mean, I just
you know
care.
What?
So if you care, I guess that's
I actually wrote down it. I wanted to say, citizen. I mean, good citizen is really what.
There you go.
A good citizen with fighting for your own rights and fighting for your own. But also, we have a freedom advocate. I love that as well, and that's how we're gonna.
I'll own that.
Yeah.
Freedom advocate.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. Karen, thank you so much for being on the show. This
Thanks
is
for having
very,
me.
very educational, and we're going to post this tonight, and we're going to
Perfect.
share it with as many people as we can, and hopefully the message reaches people, and they learn and they get encouraged by what you do, and hopefully when a call comes through again for something like this in the future, people will be, you know what, maybe this time I am going to become an advocate for this, a volunteer and support it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Adrian. Thanks so much.
All right, take us out. The world is full of interesting people with wisdom and extraordinary experiences to learn from. Join me on a journey to discover them, speak with them, and learn from them. I'm Adrian Sinclair, host of A Podcast with Interesting People at apodcast.com.